Hello, everyone. This is Margaret Manning with 60 and Me. This is the place where women over 60 come to be inspired. Many of us in the community are becoming grandmothers and dealing with our older children, and these can sometimes be interesting and complicated relationships. My guest today is Ellen Rittberg. Ellen is an award-winning journalist and writer. She is a mother of 3 and a recent grandmother. And she has written a book, 35 Things That Your Teen Won't Tell You, So I Will. And because Ellen had her children in a period of 3 years, I think she's eminently qualified to talk about parenting and being a grandmother. So welcome, Ellen.
Thank you so much for having me, Margaret.
So, my first question to you, in your book, you say that this is the best time ever in history to be a grandparent. And I wondered if you could explain that, why you think this is uniquely a special time.
Oh, I definitely think the very best time. In part, we like rock and roll. Our kids like rock and roll. That may sound inane, but we are lucky to be living in an era where we are living longer than we've ever lived before. And with God's help, if we have good health and we watch our bodies and we try to do affirming things to ourselves, we really can go into the world, into our 60s, 70s, 80s, and even 90s with God's help, and really live a vital, vibrant life and not look like that old lady with the little white pin curls and the apron and the very, round cheeks. And we can go about the world and connect with all kinds of people, including our families and our grandchildren, in a way we never did in any period before, I think.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, especially on the technology side. There's so many ways now to stay in touch with our family, with our grandkids. And I agree with you. It's an amazing time.
Totally. And not only that, I'm sometimes saying to my kids, not my grandkids yet, because they're 4 and 2, about something I heard about a new social media app, a new function of a social media app. I want to know all these things.
Yes.
I really want to be connected. I can't imagine feeling that life is passing me by. That's not even an option in this day and age. It just wouldn't make sense to ever even let that thought enter my mind.
You've just raised a really interesting thought and a word that I associate with both my grandkid and me, and that's curiosity. I think women this age, our age, are just curious about life. We want to learn.
So true. Everything interests me, and I keep adding new interests. I don't know about you, Margaret, but
sure.
I never was interested in science at a younger age, unfortunately. I lived in a time when, people wanted to cut back on the going to the moon program and NASA, and, less and less people were watching the launches. And suddenly I'm very interested in astronomy. I've been going to lectures. I've been going to public outings with others who are much more skilled and knowledgeable about astronomy than myself, just to give you an illustrative example. And I want to take my grandkids, and I will be taking my grandkids to go see and do.
That is fabulous. So you wrote this book, 35 Things Your Teen Won't Tell You, So I Will. And it's a great book. It's very enlightening. And I know, and I learned a lot. Many similar experiences with 2 boys. But how have you adapted that book for grandchildren? Because I know a lot of the rules you talked about apply.
Okay, great question. Your relationship with your grandchild is totally unique. There's no one way to do it. And how I did it with my kids was I had a theory about how I had to deal with them so that they respected me and that I was the authority figure, and I was really totally at the helm of the ship. When you're a grandparent, it's different. You're not at the helm of the ship, but you can be really, really important in their lives, whether or not you live in the same city as your grandchildren do, that I do, or if you live at a remove, as we know we're speaking on Skype. And that is, what is the kind of person you want to be to your grandchildren? And also, what kind of a child or person do you want, hopefully, your grandchildren to be? Yeah. And you play into that mix. If you respect the parents' values, and you may have not exactly identical values, you kind of weave what you can put to the table with what they're giving to the table with so much effort. And of course, you're going to put in a lot of effort. And it's exciting and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's why I say it's why we have kids so we can have grandkids. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I'm sorry, that's the way I feel.
It's a lot of fun. They
It's
are
a
so
lot.
wonderful to learn through and learn with. But you know, one of the things you say in the book, and I actually am learning this with my granddaughter, is that kids are sneaky.
Yeah.
Teenagers or grandkids, and they've got so much access to things they can get into mischief with. But explain what you mean by that they're sneaky and how we deal with that as grandparents.
Okay, absolutely. Well, first of all, it's my premise of the book, if you will, that kids are going to lie and they're sneaky, teenagers particularly, so it's tweens too, and even younger children. Why? If they want something and they want it badly enough, they will lie to get it. And that really increases as they enter their teenage years because they're not always with you and they're not always under your physical control. So the more a child wants something, the more they're going to think about how they're going to perpetrate a lie that
Get
you're
it?
going to go with, and so that they can be at that activity or do that thing, which absolutely they shouldn't be doing. And for younger kids, if you're a grandparent of preschool kids, as I am, but soon to be entering school, you know that they all want things all the time. And,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that you're going to give them, or what are you going to negotiate with them, and what are you going to do that's making your time pleasant with them, which is so important when you're a grandparent.
You know, that is so true. And you actually raised this point earlier, but it kind of is reinforced here. And that's about rules in general. And, that there should be rules in the house and that they should be enforced, or the children should behave and appreciate, respect you. But how do you do that as a grandparent, where, like you said before, you're not in control. You are not the parent. So you have to look at the values and rules of your child. How do you deal with that?
Great question. I just had a situation wherein I saw that a visiting uncle wasn't getting the response that he needed to get when he was out on an outing with the grandchild. So I suggested, why don't you talk to the parent and have the parent tell the child that the uncle is in control when they're with the uncle. And you
Yeah,
got to follow the
that's
uncle's
true.
rules. And that goes the same with grandparents. When they totally ignore what you say, and they think it's okay, grandkids are going to continue to do that. So you really have to enlist the parents, I think, in that situation, or
Yeah.
in that future situation, which is going to occur through time.
Yeah, you get that comment like, well, mommy lets me do that.
Right. Well, grandma may not, and also it's something to talk about with the parent. I have a feeling that most grandparents are less strict and have less rules than the parents do. So I don't think that comes up as much as the other way around, where grandma allows the child to do something, or grandpa mildly, and some small thing that maybe the parents don't do with the child. And maybe it's even a choice of activities. It's not an unacceptable activity, but it's something that the child may not have done with the parent because that's not where the parent's interests
Right.
lie.
I want to talk about the subsidizing kids, because that's another rule that you talk about, that you should not subsidize. I think you say subsidize your children, and I'm assuming you're talking about grandkids here too, at your peril. Don't give them everything that they want. And I'd read something a few weeks ago about the fact that this was statistically, proven that I think a large number of people per year, grandparents per year, are giving their older children or their grandkids about $7,000 a year to help them
Yeah.
with economically, or
Wow.
to help them with their rent, or because it's just a tough time for people. So we're getting into these situations where kids want things and they can't afford them. How do you deal with that without breaking your rule about not subsidizing?
Okay. With grandkids, I think it is a different thing. It really has to do with what a grandparent's means are. If there are grandparents who really have the means to pay for an activity that they know the parents can afford, and it's a worthwhile activity and the child will benefit, I say, why not? It can be some kind of art activity. It can be whatever is a beneficial activity that helps the child perhaps develop a skill or aptitude that will make the child feel more
Right,
confident,
right.
or may even affect the child's future in a good way. If it's something frivolous and silly that the parent, or I should say the grandparent, doesn't understand the need for, why would the grandparent want to subsidize a need that they thought was silly? I'll tell you some things just very briefly that I think are great activities. I'm a big believer, and I tweet about it periodically throughout the summer. I think every parent has to teach their child how to swim. If they don't know how to teach their child or they don't know how to swim, they've got to enlist somebody to do it. And generally, it does cost money. That is such a worthwhile and so important thing. Every year, children drown. If the parents can't see it through for whatever reason, maybe it's not even financial, they're just real busy and they don't get around to it, pay for your grandchildren's swimming lessons. I did it, and it's great, and it's so important. And they may need a second lesson, which I'm thinking about, because one of my grandkids, he was the oldest one in the class, and he fooled around a little bit, and they asked for him to take it over again. And that's so important.
Yeah.
Another thing is, you as a grandparent, you don't have to spend a lot of money when you come see your grandkids. If they're little, bring a little something. I mean, why not? I mean, it'd be great for them to be happy when they see you and give you hugs and kisses just because you're you. But if you bring something that relates to your personality, I'm a writer and I also do art. I bring usually art supplies. And there's so many different art supplies I can bring. So I bring always things that the parents approve of, crayons that are washable, etc. You have to be aware of those things. Do that. But I would say, you don't refuse a request outright. And sometimes the request won't be a request from the parents. It's something that you perceive the child needs, the grandchild needs, and you're able to do it. If you can't do it and you can't afford to do it as a grandparent, that's a different story, of course.
You've raised a really good point, though, about not being afraid to let your own personality come out. I mean, they have their parents to relate to, but they also have this opportunity to see a grandparent, a grandmother, in her own beautiful self, whether she was a bit bohemian, as your case, you're a writer, you're an artist, and to start forming, that relationship with you that's a little different than with their parents.
It is so true. I mean, another interest I have, which I only developed it, I'd say, through my more mature adult years, is I'm a total nature lover. I bird watch. Actually, after we finish our conversation, I'm probably going to go out on a bird walk. But at the earliest age, I took my grandson, who was then, I guess, not even 2. He was probably like one and change. And we'd take a walk in a park. And one of the first words that he said was acorns. And we collected acorns. And now he always collects things. He collects rocks. When we go on walks, he collects rocks with the parents. And it's something he's really, really interested in.
That's sweet.
Yeah, and I also brought him books on astronomy and books on science because I feel he has that aptitude. So, yeah, very important to bring what you can bring to the table, or if you have new interests as a person who's 60 plus, who's always learning, by all means, include your children and your grandchildren in that.
That's really funny. Be thankful he didn't start calling you Acorn as because
my name. I went from Gramsy to Gran, all different names. So
I asked that question to the community of women and 60andMe, and we got, I don't know, about 500 answers. It was most amazing because they're all from all over the world. So we got these great nicknames, but some were really, like Acorn. They were just like associated with something that they really had fun with the grandparent, and hopefully over time it works out. But I think what you said, just to change subject a bit, is that you said pay attention to your grandchildren. Watch what they're interested in. Care and ask them, do you like to play the piano? And just see, pay attention. But one of your rules that I read was, basically pay attention to when I'm in trouble. When I got a problem.
Yes.
And to keep your little antenna going. And, it reminds me that recently, there's been so many very sad stories about kids making bad decisions or even committing suicide based on something that's troubling them. These are older kids, teenagers. But how do you pay attention to a grandchild, particularly when their language is not that developed, and how do you watch what's on their minds?
Well, getting to know your grandchild is a cumulative process, and you don't see your grandchild as much as the parents do. So what you do is you essentially get their essence, if you will. And so whenever I'm with the child for any length of time, even if it's briefly, I have a conversation, or I try to, with the parent. And we talk about stuff that I've observed and I've picked up on, some of which may be good, some of which may be bad, and some of it which may just be fun and funny to talk about, and gives the parent a good feeling because I'm understanding their child as they understand their child. And so that's really important. At the very, very least for, or I say this in my book, for a parent really needs to see their child daily, look them in the eye, see how they're doing, see how they're responding to things, see how their hygiene is, see how they're dressed, see if their affect, which is, how their face looks, are they sad, are they happy? Grandparents are not indifferent to that. We see things, and I think as we get older, hopefully we get wiser, or we aspire to wisdom. So we're not always wanting to be talking, and we don't need to impress people. We want to just, add to the world and add to our families and bring good to the world. So, we're going to pick up on maybe on little things that the parent, or we're going to inquire about it in a very non-judgmental way if we see something that's troubling to us. And as the child grows, there may be the child on their own as they get older, getting in touch with us via telephone, via Skype, via, grandma, let's get together, or grandpa, let's get together. Really important. Everything we put in, we get out, and we have to remember that.
Yeah, that is so cool. You're a great grandmother. You must have so much fun with your kids.
Oh, I think
with your grandkids.
I think everybody's grandparents are fabulous. I mean, everybody's grandchildren are fabulous, and everybody's grandparents are fabulous, with a little effort on the grandparents' part, really.
Well, I think you've also highlighted the importance of having a communication with the parents. But of course, that isn't always the case in our society today. Lots of couples have children and they're separated, not living together. So, you sometimes get caught in the middle.
If you want to continue those relationships, you have to be respectful of the person that may not be in the picture with you, or you may see very, very rarely, but who is the parent of that child. And once you recognize that, and never ever say anything bad about that parent, you are so ahead of the game, and that parent is less likely to want to cut you out of the life if you are respectful of who they are and the role they play, which is the parent in the child's life. Yeah. And that should be your guiding principle, really.
Yeah, that's ideally the way it can be, and it can be very challenging. But that's about the best you can do. But I think that mutual respect is where you have to start. But questions in your book, because I haven't, my memory won't bring them all back to me. But are there any other of your 35 things that your teen won't tell you that you will, that apply specifically to grandkids that you can think of?
Yeah, I think lots of them.
Okay.
I think, we talked about the sneakiness part, right? I can bring you I can walk you a little bit briefly through the ages. When they're young, it has to do with, how they treat you. I talk about never letting a child get physical with you as a parent of a tween or a teen. Same thing with grandma. You got little kids, and sometimes they're just, being bad for the sake of it, or seeing what's up there, and so they may throw something at you, or just do something that's a very big no-no, and you gotta deal with that. You don't want a grandchild trying to hurt you, or doing something that could hurt you. So you have to draw certain lines in the sand and deal with them right away. And again, you may or may not enlist the parent in it. The parent may be away on a vacation, or the parent may just be out for an afternoon, or you may be out on an outing. But at the end of the day, a lot of it is the communication back with the parent and letting them know what happened. Because at the end of the day, they're going to be reinforcing, not you, as much as you would like to reinforce. You're not there that much. So that's number one. And then as they get older, schoolwork, very important. If they have certain things they like, certain things they need help with. If you have a preschooler, start bringing in phonics books, start bringing educational things. I just always bring books I always bring books, number one, but I also start to bring activity books, mazes, things they're going to be doing when they enter kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, and then on. Again, when they like something and you're able to, take them to the planetarium, take them to the Natural History Museum. I'm all about education with kids, making it fun. I can just give you an illustrative example. And, do's and don'ts. You take a grandchild to a museum, even a very young child, they can understand the no-touch principle. If there's something they like in a museum, bring them back more than once. I know my grandchild, there was this very, very big exhibition in one room of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City of pennies, Lincoln pennies, for those of you who are not American. And it was taken close up, and it must have been at least 50 or more pennies in different states of greenness and copperness. And this little person loved it so that he wanted to go back, and we went back 3 or 4 times to that. Now, if he wanted to touch it, I would tell him he can't do that. And if he continued to touch it, which that didn't happen, he would know he couldn't come back there, or he couldn't go to that particular exhibition. So a lot of it is understanding consequences. As to work, I think really try to convince the parent of the child to have your child be busy, to have them get involved in extracurricular activities, particularly since most parents work and you want your child supervised. Lots of extracurricular activities, lots of sports, and there's lots of different sports. So even if you say your child's not that well coordinated, they still benefit from team activities or from individual activities, that there's something about them that they're better at that activity than another activity. And really emphasize the work ethic, both in school and if they work, and also emphasize kindness. Very, very important. Anti-bullying, I'm all about that.
Those are all really great pieces of advice. I mean, the work ethic is super important, I think, and I know that sometimes we take it a bit lightly. Like we pay you some, for doing some chores around the house, but they really need to understand the value of money. And actually, it reminded me when you were talking about the pennies exhibition that may have been a sign that this guy was going to turn out to be a stockbroker or something. Maybe his passion for pennies.
No, but I think the ability to appreciate art. And I have to admit, there was a little bit of grandma braggadocio in that, because he was making comments about the pennies, and he was really very little.
That's sweet.
And I could see the people listening and like smiling and saying, oh, what a smart little fellow. But it was really about exposing at an early age to something that's positive, that can enhance the child and enhance the child's view of the world.
And, I think kids can, even young ones, can understand complex, explanations about things. I mean, just the basic things about, what is an atom? How is nature? How does it work? They're even 5 years old, they will understand these concepts.
Well, I'll tell you, and I think you're so right, and it's not even variable. I bought this little, there's these books, they're put out, and I can't remember the publisher. They're small books that kind of tell you a lot about the planets in a very concise way. And there was something about the moons of, I hope I'm saying this right, is it Jupiter or Saturn?
Yeah.
And the child was less than 2, and I remember he memorized Io and Ganymede, and I don't remember the third one, Europa. And he actually remembered it the next time I came.
Yeah.
Subsequent to that, he may have forgotten, but there's something to that. And the parents took pride in hearing him say them, and in recognizing that this child has an interest in science, and therefore they will develop it as well as me. It's not all in my basket. It's in our basket.
And as a grandparent, you can actually feed that information back. Like, things may happen when they're with you that they don't happen with their parents. They may you may spark something on the creative side or the writing side that their parents perhaps don't bring out themselves. So you feed it.
So true. And not only that, I think sometimes our view of what our grandchildren can do and the aptitudes they already have is higher than the parents, even if the parents have high expectations. A case in point, there's a wonderful, wonderful children's science museum in Newark, New Jersey, which is very close to New York City. And we went, and with the child who was then around maybe 4, not even, and they had an activity which had to do with being sick. They needed the child to be 6 years old in order to participate, but it was a quiet day. And I encouraged participation because I thought the child had the attention span. And what he was doing was he was doing a mock test for a particular antigen, and it wasn't blood, but it was a substance that he was turning a color and testing. And he sat and did it for, I'd say, around 45 minutes. And the parents were amazed. And I think that that's something that grandparents bring to the fore. We really understand what a child's capabilities are, in part because we've gone through all the developmental processes of a child.
Well, that was a question that I was going to ask you, which is, what are the unique characteristics, do you think, of a grandmother, of a woman over 50, 60, that really you bring to the relationship with a grandchild? What are the unique characteristics?
That's a good question. I think that, as you say on your website, I think in a way 60 is the new 40. I do think that we really have a youthfulness to us if we as I say, with God's help and with a little effort on our part, I think really being physically active is really important. Being able to move with your grandchild, really important. So that's something that we bring to the table that other generations may not have brought as much or in as large number as we do. The other thing we bring is at least in my case, a non-judgmental quality. Now, again, that may be in part from my journey, my training, because I was a journalist as a first career, and I still write, and I still have the objectivity. I can bring objectivity and non-judgmentalness to the fore. And I think when we deal with parents and our grandchildren, that helps our relationship be better. And we are a feel-good people. I think a lot of women in their 60s are feeling good about ourselves. I don't know about you, but when I look in the mirror, maybe I'm in the minority. I hope not. I like myself, wrinkles and all. I almost want to be a proponent of, like, why change your face? I keep seeing these celebrities who I don't even know what they looked like before. They're so altered. This is who I am. I mean, I basically look the same as I looked when I was 25, except I think my face got thinner because for some reason I started to exercise and I got thinner. This is the person I am. My facial expressions, our affect, if you will, our humanity is on our faces. And so we bring that to the table, oddly enough, as opposed to a 20, 30, 40, or even maybe a 50-year-old. Yeah.
No, I love that. And I think the other word that comes to my mind is, perspective. We are, as 60-year-old women, we lived through the 60s and 70s where individualism was a big thing in our lives, to do what you want, to be strong, to stand up for what you believe in. But we've had the now experience and perspective of the 80s and 90s, where it all came together. And so you come out now, more rounded, and you are still fun and experimental, but okay, here's some boundaries and guidelines, things that happen.
Oh, a great word, Margaret. Great word, boundaries. I say in my book, 35 Things Your Teen Won't Tell You, so I will. You've got to establish boundaries with your children. And it's the same thing with your grandchildren. But it's all about boundaries. It's all about giving your children and your grandchildren a sense that the world is a very exciting place, but there are also dangers inherent in it, and we have to be aware of those dangers. And my mother has a great expression. I haven't heard her use it recently, but there's no fool like an old fool. And the last thing I want to do is be a foolish older person. I mean, when I was younger, I think I used to pray for some wisdom because I wasn't sure. Some people seem to know stuff I didn't know, and I wanted to know those things. And as we go through life and experience life, rather than, feeling regretful, feel excited and charged up about what life is and appreciative of life and respectful. I keep using that word, but I so respect parents, the parents of my grandchildren, and parents who are, trying to raise their children in a thoughtful way and putting in that time. Because being a parent requires lots and lots of time and a lot of effort and a lot of paying attention. It's a mindfulness.
Yeah. This has been a great conversation, and I know it helps a lot of women in the community who are grandmothers and approaching grandmotherhood, and it's been wonderful to hear all your advice. So your book is 35 Things That Your Teen Won't Tell You, So I Will.
Right. Thanks for reading the book so thoroughly, Margaret. And really, I'm sure you are an entirely thoughtful person because your questions are so thoughtful.
Oh, thank you. Well, we put the website address up there so people can reach you and order the book or learn more about what you're doing.
Thank you.
And is there any last message you'd like to give the community, to our women?
Oh, totally. Smile, enjoy, go out. And if you're feeling depressed, so important. Take a walk. You are going to make that depression go away, and seek out people because this is a wonderful world. And again, seek out family members, grandparents, children. If you have them, it's so important.
Stay connected. Well, it's been great to meet you and great talking. We'll have to get you back on so we can continue the conversation. Thanks, Ellen.
You're doing great work, Margaret. Keep it up. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Have a great one.
You too.